What's going on, everyone? And in this video I want to focus on the iPhone X and the question if you should buy this device in 2020, in this year. So let's just get started. First of all, you know that the iPhone X was released alongside with the iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus. To quickly sum it up, I want to tell you, and you of course know, that it was the first iPhone to ever bring the new design with a notch, and this was kind of revolutionary for an iPhone since we didn't get a redesign for a couple of years. And to quickly recap the specs, well, this iPhone has 3 gigs of RAM, Apple A11 chip. It was running iOS 11 out of the box, and it still supports the latest version of the iOS, of course the iOS 13.3, and for a couple of years it is expected to still run the latest software, so I wouldn't really have any complaints, or I wouldn't even worry about the support of the software, since it is expected to run really long on the latest version of iOS. It came in 64 or 256 gigabytes version, and it was available in 3 different colors, namely the black, white, and gold. This was it. The selection wasn't that huge, but the most important part of the phone, in my opinion, or at least one of the most important factors when you use an iPhone or any kind of device in general, is the display. And the display on the iPhone X was the first ever on an iPhone to have the OLED technology. So kind of revolutionary, at least for Apple, but that means that the display is actually very capable. The resolution of this display is actually really impressive too. Of course, if you compare it to the latest models like the iPhone 11 or the iPhone XR. The display size of the iPhone X is 5.85 inches, which means that it is a tiny little bit smaller than the iPhone 11, but the resolution is 2436 to 1125 pixels with a PPI of 458, which is kind of impressive. And yeah, it's of course the Super Retina HD AMOLED display, but it also has a 3D touch technology built into the display, which is like a pressure sensitive touch. I know Apple is trying to, I know it's not going to be part of the newer iPhones, it's not part of the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, it probably won't be featured in the future iPhones, but it still has a pressure sensitive display. With the iOS 13, Apple tried to actually make it unusable, so they replaced a long press with the 3D touch. And that means that the 3D touch doesn't really make any sense anymore, but it is still a great feature, but sadly it's not supported anymore, but it is still part of the iPhone X. Let me just show you why it was useful and how you can actually see today, even running iOS 13, that the 3D touch is right there. So here is the iPhone 11, which doesn't have the 3D touch under the display, which means that it doesn't work the way it does on the older iPhones. For example, if you want to move around the cursor here, you have to hold down to your keyboard, and it's just gonna make every key blank and allows you to move your finger across to move the cursor. So on the iPhone 11, which doesn't have the 3D touch, you have to hold down on the space bar and then you can move around. If you click on any individual key, it's not going to do it because it doesn't recognize that you're pressing it firmly. It only does it on the space because you're doing a long press. But on the iPhone X, which has the pressure sensitive display, it doesn't matter wherever you do it, it just recognizes that you actually pressed the hard way, and that way it triggers the action and the shortcut or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's one of the things that really makes me not like it. Yeah, if I would complain that this plays, of course the resolution, this one is bigger and everything on the iPhone 11, but the 3D touch, I really miss this feature. It is of course not the only iPhone with the design to have the 3D touch. Of course we have it also on the iPhone XS, but we're talking about this, and of course the later iPhones like the XR and 11 don't have that, so that's why I like it so much on the iPhone X. One of the most important factor when it comes to security is the replacement of Touch ID with the Face ID, which means that it is a face unlocking feature. We know and are familiar with it. But what I'm trying to say is that it's still reliable and it still works the way it should. Of course, it's not as fast as on the iPhone 11, but it's still kind of reliable and kind of fast. But with this one, you have to keep in mind that it only unlocks your face in some good conditions, like you're not supposed to wear a scarf or covering half of your face. I mean, that is due to security reasons, but you also have to keep the phone about 25 to 50 millimeters away from your face. So you have to get used to it. With a Touch ID, it's not the case. You just place your finger on the reader, on the home button, and it just does the thing. It just gets the job done. But here you have to be, I mean, it just takes some getting used to if you're switching from some older iPhones, but it's definitely not bad. Well, when it comes to the camera, a lot of people buy the iPhone X or think about the iPhone as the camera master. And I gotta say that the iPhone has always great camera. And when it comes to the iPhone X, there is no exception. We have the dual lens setup. It used to look kinda odd when they released it, but now we got used to it just like all the time. Of course, when they released the triple lens setup, we even thought that it's gonna be unbearable, but we got used to it again. It is capable to take portrait photos, but it is not perfect, and usually it is advised to only take portrait photos of people because it is more likely to guess where exactly it is supposed to blur out the background, but it also uses the other lens to measure the size and the distance, so that's why you have the dual lens setup. Of course, it's not the wide-angle lens, so they replaced the telephoto lens with the wide-angle lens. So on the iPhone 11 we also have the dual lens setup, but I think that Apple made a great step with adding the wide-angle lens instead of the telephoto lens. For example, even on the iPhone XR you are able to take a portrait photo only using the software, which doesn't mean that this is a bad way to take portraits, but it's not really that necessary to have the telephoto lens. Of course, it is capable of 2 times optical zoom and 10 times digital zoom, so yeah, it's really a great camera. It also allows you to record 4K video at 60 FPS or 1080p video at 30 or 60 FPS, and you can also record slow motion video at 1080p at 120 or 240 FPS, so there are plenty of options to go for, and the iPhone X really has a great camera. I mean, there aren't really many complaints. Of course, it also performs pretty well in the dark when there is not enough lighting, but it's not as good as on the iPhone 11 with the dedicated night mode. Of course, you have to keep that in mind. The front camera is also pretty capable. It allows you to take 1080p video as well and some really quality photos, but the most it is a 7 megapixel camera. On the backside, I forgot to mention that we have a 12 megapixel camera. I also have to say that we have the capabilities of using the feature called Animoji, so you're not gonna miss out on that when you go ahead and buy the iPhone X. Yeah, it was actually one of the revolutionary features, and that was due to the fact that they used Face ID, and that way the iPhone can measure your face perfectly. So that's the reason that they can use Animoji. Of course, the iPhone X runs really well. There are some apps that require more power, and I think that the iPhone X really does a great job maintaining good quality when you're playing some a little bit more intense games. And I gotta say that the iPhone X is overall a great phone when it comes to the performance. It doesn't stutter, it doesn't lag. I didn't have any kind of problem. It used to be my daily driver for 2 years, and I didn't have a single complaint. Although there were some complaints against the iPhone X. For example, there were some cold weather issues, and people, when they were using it in really cold weather during winter, iPhones of some users would just really become unresponsive for some reason, due to the cold. So that was one of the downside, and it was also reported in the iPhones group on Reddit. People were complaining about that, but it was back then when it was released. Now it's not really an issue anymore, and you shouldn't really worry about it. I used the iPhone when it was really cold outside, and I didn't have any kind of problems. The screen is supposed to be very durable, and there are plenty of accessories to pick from, because right now, after some years, the developers got used to the new design, and also with the release of the iPhone XS, which was completely identical to the iPhone X, there are plenty of accessories and cases to go for. So there is literally no complaint that you won't be able to find any kind of case for the iPhone X. And usually I mention it in every single video of mine where I talk about iPhones that we do not have any problem with the accessories, and there are plenty of options to go for. So even with the iPhone X you have plenty to pick from. Of course, I would recommend you getting some of the thicker cases because of two reasons. Because it can protect your iPhone a little bit more intensively. It also makes the backside of the iPhone flat, because right now you have a protruding camera, and it means that if you lay it flat on the table, it drags back and forth. As you can see, it's not really comfortable using it flat on a table without a case. Even though we still have, and if you go ahead and open up apple.com right now, you are able to buy the iPhone 8, which was released at the same time at the same Apple event right next to the iPhone 10, and this one got discontinued for some reason. You can only buy it as a used model or from some other places or other websites, which doesn't mean that you're not able to get the phone. Of course, there are plenty of iPhone 10s out there, so if you plan on buying it, of course, yeah, it always makes sense to go ahead and buy a used iPhone, a used model, in case you want to save money. Yeah, so you can get it on eBay for about $500 or even $400 if you're lucky. So I guess that it's a great deal. Of course, keep in mind that the lowest capacity is 64 gigs, and that may not be enough for everybody, but as far as the performance, camera, connectivity, and the usual stuff of an iPhone goes, I have to say that it is a very reliable phone, which is not going to disappoint you if you get it. Yeah, it was one of the first iPhones to ever bring wireless charging, so it is there. We do not have a headphone jack, of course, but we are used to it. Everybody knows about it. And the iPhone 10 runs really smoothly and is very reliable, like I said. It is able to handle some really intense 3D graphics, and it just works. You can still reach every corner of the phone, and you can use it very comfortably, in my opinion, so I wouldn't really see a problem right there. And one of the best things, if not the best one, is the display, the resolution, the quality of the display, viewing angles, and everything is perfect. The size may not be perfect for everybody, but if you compare the resolution, for example, to the iPhone XR, to the iPhone 11, I mean, the iPhone 10 is just great. And it still has OLED display, and with the integration of the dark mode, it's gonna be a really nice experience to use a dark iPhone. Yeah, I mean, I just love it so much. So now the question is, should you buy the iPhone 10 right now in 2020? I would personally say that it is a great buy, depending on the price, of course. If you don't pay like $700 for it, then I gotta say that it's gonna be a great device. I mean, it works and everything, it is reliable, it is going to be supported for at least a couple of years, and it already has the brand new design with the cutout that Apple is expected to keep for some time. So yeah, I have to say that it looks modern, the camera is amazing. There are still many people who use this device. Of course, it's a great piece of tech. It is not the cheapest device out there, but if you plan on buying this one and you're kind of not sure if you should buy it because it's not available on Apple's website anymore, you don't know what happened, why Apple discontinued it, well, they just didn't want to distract you from buying the iPhone XS, and it was kind of weird, so that's why they just put it away. But I have to say that it's a great iPhone. I mean, I personally used it for 2 years as my daily driver, and I had literally zero complaints with this. Of course, it's an iPhone, and you know what iOS is all about, and when you know that, then it's a great iPhone. If you want an iPhone, this is a good one. Of course, make sure to get a great price on this, since there are plenty of places which will try to sell you a brand new device for like a really insane price, but if you get some really decent price, then it's going to be a really great device and you're going to be satisfied with this. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe. See you guys later.